All right, Brandon here. We're back with another episode of Modified Rides Podcast. This time we're going to touch base with someone I've dealt with for a few years. Started working with him back with some of my SEMA builds, some of my early SEMA builds at that. So here we have Nick Caloroso. Did I mess that up again?
Caloroso. Hey, you're close. Like I said, you pinch the fingers and it's all good.
Say it right there. So what's going on? What you been up to, man?
Well, still selling lighting. I'm with the team at Morimoto. We're part of Driven Lighting Group, Hoonigan, Wheel Pros. Big corporate entity, a lot of brands and a lot of moving pieces, but still, a light bulb salesman, as I like to say.
You're not door to door though, are you? You're not carrying a
Not
briefcase?
door to door. No, I think I don't know how that would work, but no, there's a lot of moving pieces, but door to door is not one of them, thankfully.
Good thing we're not in the 50s anymore. So
yeah.
So I met Nick back. Trying to think. That would have been probably SEMA 15, maybe
15, probably 2014 or 15. Yeah, I was still working for Dynamics at the time, and I think that wasn't your Ram build, was it?
No. I think the first thing I was involved with you guys was a Subaru. I think we tried. Yeah, because we had
right.
You had the DRLs, the sea lights and everything for the headlights, and the fog lights and all that stuff. So, well, I guess let's step back and start. So, when you were young, were you into vehicles? Did you stumble into the aftermarket world later? Like, how did you get into vehicles?
So getting into vehicles is a fun story. My mom's college roommate, I think this is what I attribute to now at this point in my life. My mom's college roommate, Bernie, really nice lady. She was the motorsports marketing manager for Anheuser-Busch for about 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And when we were little, she ran like Kenny Bernstein, like Top Fuel dragsters and everything, like all the racing programs. And when we were little, she would take us to the drag racing at Heartland Park in Topeka, Kansas. And so, I'm talking really young. This is before all the rules of COVID and everything, where they would like literally pick me up and like put me in the Top Fuel dragster. And like, I'm sitting there as a little kid holding the wheel of like Kenny Bernstein's dragster. And like looking back now, I'm like, yeah, that's probably what got me into cars. And, and then just hearing my dad tell us stories about his cousin had a 1970 Chevelle, like picking him up from high school or picking him up from school, like how cool, he felt just being in that car and like just hearing stories like that. And then obviously video games, like everyone in the 90s, like, all the Gran Turismo games and Need for Speed, and just got obsessed. And I've just always loved cars, honestly.
Did you have cars that you had that were modified? Is it something that you stepped into later in life, or?
Well, yeah, when I started to get a job in high school, I started like saving up for parts and stuff and started learning about some of the various brands. So my car history is a checkered one at best. But, I started with a 95 Cutlass, which there's not a lot of aftermarket for that, obviously, moved on from that, ended up with a S197 Mustang, like an 06.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what showed me all the brands. I started seeing various retailers, and I'd get the mail in, like the catalogs and everything, and I'd just like thumb through them and like almost have every part memorized. And then I moved on from that Mustang to another Mustang GT. And then finally I got a BMW M4, 2017 or 18. And I've had that pretty much ever since. And so it's been fun. And just familiarizing myself with all the various retailers at a really young age. Like I was on forums when I was in like 7th or 8th grade, and I just like loved being on the forums and seeing what people did and trying to save up, trying to find deals and classified sections and stuff. And, it's just always been part of my life. And then I started doing it as a job.
So like with the forums and stuff, that was, I guess, age-wise back before all Facebook and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. It's funny. So I will say this to the folks at some of the people I work with, Edmund, I think it was Vertical Scope or Auto Guide. I managed 143 forum accounts for Dynamics, like sponsored forums. And I'm like, I was all in. And like, I still, to this day, I miss the forums. I think they were really, really a good time.
That was where we all went to before we had the the Facebook and all that stuff. Like that was you'd spend more time learning there. That was, I guess, pre-YouTube for me. I mean, I'm a little older, but I guess that's, you learned about how parts worked or what would fit with what. Now you just pick up YouTube and search what you want, and there's a million videos of how that part goes together. And it may be
Hopefully.
right, it may be wrong, but.
Well, let me ask you this, not to carbon date both of us, but do you remember streetfire.net?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Car domain?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember all those. Those were fun.
Spent hours searching modified to see what vehicles were for sale, whether you could afford them, all pre-marketplace. So
yeah, is it available? Yes.
Yes. So did you ever do, before you started working in the industry, did you ever start going to shows or anything, car shows, or is that something that you picked up once you started working?
Yeah, we would go to car shows for fun. I mean, I grew up in Kansas, like on the Kansas side, Kansas City, but Kansas side. And there weren't a lot of opportunities for car shows like there are now. Now you have Kansas City Cars and Coffee, which those guys do an awesome job. Boo Ra, my friend, runs that. And, those are really good events. I always had like if there were car shows, we would find a way to go. But I'm talking like, I think it was in the classifieds of like newspapers back then. Do you remember? I mean, do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like, hey, local Mustang car club, like show me Mustang car club in St. Louis. Like, I'm pretty sure it was advertised literally in the classified sections of like the St. Louis Post Dispatch or the Kansas City Star. No joke.
I'm almost 50, so I started doing this in the early 90s. So yeah, there's a lot that's changed information sharing wise since then. So, well, what actually led you to dive into the automotive aftermarket world? Like, how did you go from just being the kid that's into some vehicles to now look at you? Like,
It's really a lot of it is luck and timing and just circumstances. I was working for like growing up in high school, I worked at car washes and stuff and like just did automotive stuff. And in college, I worked for O'Reilly Auto Parts, which was great. Shout out to Dave Bush, my old manager. But it's a funny story. So I was I was taking my business classes at Truman State University. I think I had like an 89 in one of my classes. It was some business administration class. Who knows? Fun, but whatever. My teacher was like, hey, if you go to the career fair, I'll bump you up. I'll give you whatever extra credit for going to the career fair. I'm like, well, okay. Who am I going to meet in, Kirksville, Missouri that is going to be like in a aftermarket scene, right? That I care about. Like, cool. So I went, obviously wanted the A, sure. And I show up and I see Paul McCain there. He's the owner of Dynamics. He had just graduated from the same university from Truman, like I think a year earlier. And he had basically a setup full of LEDs on display. And I was like sitting there and I'm like, wow, I've installed some of these. I've, these sizes, this size here and here in my Mustang. And, this was before there were really good providers of like LED lighting products. This was like, if you're going to eBay or something, like it's going to be a struggle to find some decent quality stuff. Like you didn't know what you were going to get.
And what
like,
year is
when
this?
it came to, let's see, I was in college. So back in like 2000, let's say 2013.
Okay. So Dynamics was a fairly new company at the time.
It was a startup,
Oh, wow.
I mean, they had some revenue, but it was basically a startup. And I remembered all the brands that I used to look at growing up, like, American Muscle and CJ Punny Parts and Lethal Performance and all these shops that I would work with. And I'm like, wow, we should make kits for Mustangs and, I should reach out to these people and get them selling our product. And, that was part of what got it going. I initially was offered an internship. Paul offered me an internship and I'm like, nah, man, I'm graduating. I need a job. And, so he, after talking to his now wife, who I went to school with, she's like, you got to hire this guy. He loves cars. And, he hired me. I started like in May, literally I think 2 weeks after I graduated and hit the ground running. And, it was a lot of fun. We grew the business a lot. And then, I got a great opportunity for my family and I moved to Atlanta to go work for Morimoto and kind of do more of the same on the B2B side of things.
So when you first started with Dynamics, what was your role there? Like,
I was like a sales manager, I guess you'd say, sales manager. I was the first salesperson really hired. So I mean, I was on the forums and I was on Facebook when it came around, and I was working with our like B2B customers or retailers and answering phone calls, doing service and support. I was helping with some, SEMA builds and marketing and just trying to do everything I could, to help grow the business. It was that fun startup phase that everybody looks back and is like, yeah, that was a lot. But one of my favorite parts of that story is that growing up, my mom would always be like, why are you looking at all these like why are you wasting your time on all these car forums reading about cars you don't even own and blah blah blah. And then like when I got my job and it was in my actual like employee job description, it was like manage forum accounts, like as a vendor, post
Yeah.
threads about product. And I showed that my mom. I'm like, see, I learned something in college. Like, so
I know there for a while, I guess online wise, you were probably one of the faces of Dial Dynamics. Like you were the one that was out there, face to face with the customers and everything. Like when it come to the show side, the SEMA side and all that.
Oh yeah. Well, I always wanted to get involved in the industry. Like SEMA was a really big opportunity. I didn't know much about it. Like everyone out there, I thought it was just a car show in Vegas, and then I started realizing it's an association. And I went to a town hall in Kansas City, my hometown, and that's really where I learned the background of SEMA and how they do so much to protect the industry and the manufacturers that are SEMA members. And so I did that. And then I also, our dealers would throw events. They would have like awesome events, like late model restoration, for example. They did their cruising event in Waco, and I would drive down to Waco and I would bring our Mustang we built, and I would do that. Or we'd do LS Fest in Bowling Green, Kentucky, with
Yeah.
the guys at Holly. Like, and I ended up just at the beginning of my career, I literally drove everywhere. I didn't fly anywhere. I literally would be like, I'm taking the FRS. We're going to Omaha for the ice cream cruise. Or I even one year we had an F-150 we built with a Pro Charger on it. I drove it all the way to Vegas. I pulled the trailer with the booth in it, and then drove all the way back. So, I mean, it was road warrior status, and it was fun. It was a really
How
fun time in my career.
how long were you with Dial Dynamics?
Oh, geez, let's see, 2013 to 2018, 2019. And then I joined Morimoto in 2020. So I had about a good 7 or 8 year run there.
So I guess being in the lighting industry, for you to go from a company like Dial Dynamics to Morimoto, it was probably a pretty easy transition.
As far as my product knowledge is great. They're obviously, you go from, we're competitors, Morimoto and Headlight Revolution, the retrofit source, we offer Diodynamics products, which are great, by the way. So it took some time, but we have a great relationship. I talk to my former colleagues at Diode often, and we stay in touch. And I'm rooting for those guys. They have a really nice facility in St. Louis. They make product in St. Louis. They built a really nice facility there, and it's good to see them grow. There's plenty of room in this industry for good places to shop with. So
Now,
it's been fun.
when you took the job with Morimoto, did you immediately up and move? Because I remember seeing you make posts and stuff like, "Hey, I'm moving. I'm looking at this," and for me to hop, from one state to another to move like that would be super scary. To basically start over at that point.
Yeah, so I had a house in St. Louis, and I'll be honest. Like when I left, it was literally right when COVID hit.
Oh
Right
yeah,
when COVID hit. So you couldn't stay in hotels. You literally couldn't. This was when I'm talking like at the very early stages when people like didn't want to touch fuel pumps because they're like, oh, I want to get COVID from a fuel pump.
yeah.
I think my wife was like, bring some hand sanitizer with you and all that jazz. And so I, I made it down there, and I was very fortunate that my colleague, the one who recruited me down, Chris Nelson, he actually had a spare bedroom, spare like guest house setup thing that was pretty awesome and pretty special. And that's how I really got to know him when I first moved there, and it really made the transition, very smooth and very easy for me. And then also, I had an amazing boss in Brian Reese, who's our CEO. He started a week before me. I didn't know him, and like we became great friends. And like during COVID, he also like was traveling back and forth, and we got to go out a lot. And eat at all the restaurants you usually can't get into because of COVID. And it was honestly, it sounds bad, but with the exception of the COVID stuff, was a pretty good time.
Now, if you didn't have the background and the lighting stuff like that, would you have moved halfway across the country at a time like that for a new job, or did it help, I guess, you knowing how the industry worked?
Well, I think it comes down to the opportunity. There's not like a one size fits all when it comes to move up and uprooting your family and doing all that. But when you have the right opportunity and, somebody makes you an offer you can't refuse it, and regardless of industry, I think that you learn skills along the way that, are very valuable for businesses. And, there are businesses that they really want those skills in their organization, and, it's a good fit. It also is convenient too. So my wife, she works for Anheuser-Busch. And so there's a brewery here in Atlanta. It's a little far away, but she's been able to make that work as well, and was able to get, transferred after some time um,
Well,
away. So it's worked out well.
isn't
It's good planning.
isn't Atlanta far from Atlanta? I mean, that's how that works down there, right? Like
Man, I'm telling you,
Atlanta's an hour from Atlanta, right?
if you, I will tell people it's not how far, it's all about the flow of traffic. And, if you time it wrong, I mean, a lot of my friends would tell you like it can literally be 2 hours. If there's an accident on 75, which there always is, then yeah, it could be a problem.
We just made that trip to Texas last weekend for LST, and it's like, all right, if we leave here at this time, we're going to be right in the middle of Atlanta. So why don't we change our leave time and miss that? So
Yeah, downtown,
so
man, it's brutal.
so what are you doing for Morimoto? I know when you first started, it was a different company than it is now, correct? For the most
Uh,
part.
Well, I mean, we're the same company. All the same pieces are there. Matt Kossoff, founder of Morimoto, is there. Chris Nelson, the founder of Headlight Revolution and GTR Lighting, is there. Like a lot of the same core pieces. We're still selling, great. We're selling lighting product. It's just we're working with our colleagues at Wheel Pros, and we're working through. They have distribution centers, and helping our Wheel Pros colleagues essentially offer Morimoto lighting to their existing customers, and to also facilitate with our current customers, because having the product available locally at the distribution centers just makes things easier for customers. I mean, you can get it literally in some cases same day or next day. So there's a lot of working with our own colleagues to help just train and help them sell the products. And then I'm also working with larger retailers and national accounts, are some of our distribution partners as well.
So with I guess with the Wheel Pros bought you guys and a couple other companies about the same time, didn't they?
Yeah, so we were acquired in September of 2021. So they acquired Driven Lighting Group, which is all of our house brand lighting products and our our retail websites. So
Now,
got them in the lighting game.
I guess you would think, Wheel Pros, you're looking at, wheels and tires. So how does the lighting aspect tie into the Wheel Pros brand? Like
Well,
what was the background behind that?
Well, I mean, put it this way, and we're also Hoonigan as well on the other side of the business. But put it this way, like you're going to let's say a four wheel parts, and you're modifying your truck. You just got a dealership, and like let's say you got a base model. What is the first thing you're doing? Wheels,
Oh,
tires,
sure.
lift, suspension, and lights. And so knowing that, and knowing that lighting is a growing segment, it just made a lot of sense. And you have really qualified salespeople or aftermarket enthusiasts that love the products and use them on their own vehicles, and it's just you know another tool in the tool belt, if you will, to help customers modify their vehicles.
Now you guys have, I guess, some of the higher end headlight replacements for a lot of vehicles. I mean, do you know the number of vehicles you actually make replacements for?
Ooh, it's got to be over 100. It's a good chunk, and we definitely strive to build. We build products to a quality, not to a cost. So when it comes to like our product lines, we're not saying like, oh, well, if we do this, we can save X number of dollars. It's really more like we're going to design the most badass headlight we possibly can,
Yeah.
and find a way to make it work. We're gonna, if we have to charge a little more to make the best product for this vehicle, um, consumers will see that, and adapt accordingly, because we basically set the industry standard when it comes to quality and performance.
I know you guys are pretty dominant in the Ford like F-250, F-350 world. Is that your number one brand, or I say number one vehicle, or what is?
It has always been it's always been a big chunk of our business. We have a lot of success with your major late model truck markets. Toyota's been great. We also dabble in a lot of random niches that you wouldn't expect. We released a whole line of late 90s Porsche headlights and taillights for the
Oh, wow.
993 and for the 964. And we've also done Ferrari taillights that have been very well received by the Ferrari community. So we do a bit of this and that. But yeah, I mean, in short, yes, we do a lot of Ford trucks, a lot of your classic, or excuse me, late model trucks. It's been pretty big.
I know if
They
you
just build a lot of them. They build a lot of them,
I know if you walk through like any of the SEMA sections, if you find a big lifted F-250 or something, or F-350, pretty good chance it has y'all's headlights on it, because they'll blow them
Mhm.
apart and color match them and make them right, which looks way better than what the factory. It almost makes the factory headlights look like they're off of some little go-kart or something, because y'all's are
Yeah.
so high end compared to what the factory comes with.
It is pretty incredible when you think about some of the trucks out there, how you spend, geez, like 60, 70, 80 grand or more, and they come with like reflector style headlights. And like reflector style headlights have been basically in production since, the 50s. I mean, they are really for forever. And it's just amazing that they haven't adapted to more modern touches and being all LED. And even still with LED, we still make a better looking headlight with better features and better styling. So even if you have OEM LED, people still upgrade because our products are brighter and better looking and have better features.
So where do you see the LED, like the headlight market and taillight market and stuff, going in the future? Is it going to be harder to change out because OEM manufacturers are doing better headlights off the assembly line, or is it something you think you are still going to be able to push the envelope even when they do that?
I think that we'll still, the aftermarket is always able to bring new advancements. And especially, when you think about certain vehicles, they're built to a cost. I mean, you can't charge 200 grand for a Toyota 4Runner, but you could make headlights that would look, at home on a $200,000 vehicle.
Yeah.
So there's certain opportunities like that. I mean, obviously, it has gotten more difficult, with modern LED technology, and a lot of the systems have made things a little more complicated. It's a lot of software development, versus just basic, resistance and such like older vehicles. And I think that, ultimately we will go back further and do more product for older vehicles that are kind of enthusiast vehicles that need some love and need some better options. And that's kind of where a lot of the Porsche stuff came into play. Is like they actually built a lot of 993s in the like mid to late 90s, and all the factory taillights, they end up cracking, or
Yeah, dry
over
rot.
time, or the headlights crack and they're like 5 grand. It's ridiculous. And people want an OEM plus look. They want modern output, but they don't want to spend 5 grand. So I still think that there's a lot of opportunity to go back and to bring more product like that to market.
Well, I know when Jeremy at Retro Shop pulled apart my Sierra headlights, he sent me a video. It's like, there's 3 fans inside this headlight. He's like, I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever seen that kind of fans in a new headlight. So I guess when OEMs are starting to do stuff like that, I guess you guys have to have your engineers sit down and figure out the best way to incorporate stuff like that.
We have some pretty impressive nerds. We have some really, really impressive nerds in the team, Morimoto. And I mean, a lot of it stems from, Matt Kossoff, our founder, has a really good idea for style. And Yoshi, who is he's like our lead designer. I mean, he literally is an artist. I mean, just a very interesting human being, brilliant. He's the kind of guy that like, you describe a headlight to him, or you like describe what you want, and he sketches on a napkin, and you're like, wow, that's basically a finished product. Like, wow, let's do that. And you have people like that are very gifted on the team that really make a huge difference in our product design versus some of the other things out there that you can kind of tell by how they look, who designed them. if
Yeah.
that makes sense. If you pick up what I'm putting down.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know there's some of these custom shops where they'll, body drop these trucks and everything. They're to the point now trying to fit these 30-inch wheels on them. They're actually modifying headlights. They're cutting headlights apart
Yeah.
to make them smaller to clear the wheel. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess you would have thought you have to modify a headlight to get a truck to sit right, but here we are.
Well, fun fact, another controversial take. So we're part of Hoonigan, of course, and the Huna Pegasus is a very well-known 993
Yeah.
or 96, excuse me, 964 Porsche, and BBI Autosport built that wide body, the carbon fiber wide body, and same thing. The fender well is cut in a certain way that requires the headlight bucket to have a shallower depth, and so at SEMA we actually put a set of Morimoto headlights on it to fit on that build that had the right bucket depth to make it work. So it's a very real thing, and hopefully people are sealing those up. Though obviously you have dust caps and stuff like that for a reason. You can't just like leave it open and not expect to get dust and things in there. So
Oh yeah, I mean, but they're heavily modifying to make stuff like
yeah,
that work. So surely they are. I mean, they seem to be. There were several of them at the show this last weekend that I know for a fact were cut to fit. So,
well, and maybe you can answer this. Maybe you can answer this for me. But I've always wondered because I've been to Lone Star Throwdown as well. I went last year. I didn't get to go this year, but lifted trucks, and I mean really lifted trucks, like
yeah,
oh yeah, like 80, like what I'm talking about, the big time ones. Why do they go
Humvee
slow
type
over
stuff.
speed
Yeah.
bumps?
How
I mean,
what?
why do they go slow over speed bumps? Like what's? I mean, I know it's a flex. I know you're worried about your powder coating and everything, and like you want to keep it nice, but like if you're adding that much suspension, I mean, can it not handle speed bumps? You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's just the same thing with the stock car. You go over one with its stock, it's still going to beat you to death. A
Yeah,
lot
but
of
I mean,
are stiffer.
for
So
100, yeah.
I mean, I'm
It,
I'm one. I don't care what I have. I'm still going to go over slow. I mean, I'm not going to. Well, if I'm in a $400 '82 Subaru, that might be something different that you forget about the speed bump. But you still don't want to beat the truck to death. For most of these guys, if you're spending that kind of money, you've got 50, 60,000 plus in your suspension. You've
yeah.
got $20,000-$30,000 worth of wheels. You buy $100,000 truck, you're $250,000. So I'd want to take care of it.
Yeah, I always wonder though. It's like, and I'm not saying like trophy truck speed, right? I'm just saying like those builds. I've always been curious about that, the functional aspect of it. And like you have really nice, in some cases, like really nice suspension setups with, like coilovers and everything. And I mean, I guess they're not designed to take that, or maybe it's the powder coating. I've always been curious, and I figured maybe you'd know the scene,
I don't think the powder coating has anything to do with it because that stuff's pretty durable. I mean, wheels come powder coated. You think of the harshness the wheels of any vehicle have, thrown at it. The wheels get more than anything, but it's probably just so much that it's still you don't want to beat the truck to death and
Yeah.
jar it. Even mine without the powder coat stuff, I still drive slow over it. But I don't know. I guess I always try to take care of stuff. I'm not one of those ones to go out and do burnouts, and I don't like
Yeah.
rubber off the side of it. And then you got a chance of breaking something, and I'm not going to put that kind of money in something and destroy it. I mean, maybe if I
Oh,
won the
yeah,
lottery.
no, I agree. I agree. I always have thought it's interesting how they like, even like the big trucks on 30s and stuff, like how they just like slowly go over them, and I'm like, it's a speed bump. You're in a truck that's got like a 10-inch lift. I've always been curious about that. Anyway,
Some of these trucks are
just some
running
passing
30.
ramblings.
Some of these trucks are running 20, 30-inch lifts. So they're
Exactly.
running big tractor tires and stuff on them now. And the fact that wheels alone, you're running a 30-inch wheel on an off-road truck with a 42 or 44-inch tire, like that's crazy to me. You hear
God bless America.
the old timers like, well, the tire's too small. It's like no one buys a 15-inch wheel anymore. They're coming stock with 22s. I mean, my wife's Tahoe's a 24 Tahoe came stock with 22-inch wheels. So we're not going to put 15s on it. That kind
Yeah,
of
I
defeats
mean,
the whole purpose of it. But one thing that I think that I think is cool with you is you are heavily tied to the SEMA side of things. So tell us how you got into the SEMA aspect and what you do with all that?
Yeah, so volunteering with SEMA has been really a big part of my career and a big part of my personal joy in quote unquote giving back to the industry and trying to help others kind of find their way in the industry. So back in, let's say 2013, I had the opportunity, like I mentioned in the very beginning, to go to Kansas City for a SEMA town hall event. It was actually at Weld Wheels. They hosted it, and it was a big town hall. Like you get to understand the industry, and I introduced myself to one of the liaisons or network directors at the time, Brian Harrison. Really, really nice guy. And he was responsible for some of the councils and networks. One of them at the time was the Young Executive Network, which we've since rebranded to the Future Leader Network. And I then learned that the Young Executive Network has programs that are intended to help young people kind of find their place in the industry or learn some skills or network and develop relationships with people in the industry. So I went all in, and they had a program it was called the Yen Power Tour. It was a partnership with the Hot Rod Power Tour where we did the whole thing, and we would visit schools and kind of explain our roles in the automotive aftermarket. And I got fortunate enough to be selected as one of the 5 drivers in, I think it was 2016, and that really accelerated my like volunteerism. Like getting the opportunity to go visit like schools and like talk to kids who were maybe not less, maybe didn't have opportunities and weren't sure what they wanted to do, but were really into cars and like doing a shop class, explaining that, hey, there's this whole world out there, and there's all these aftermarket companies that are looking for people with your skills, and it was very inspiring, and I've always enjoyed those opportunities. I've done a lot of the high school speaking engagements they used to do at like World of Wheels. Those are always really fun. And then probably the program that I'm most proud of, with my time in volunteering is our professional development program, which is actually applications are open now. Link in the somewhere below. But long story short, I did a 12-week Dale Carnegie class. My at the time boss Brian Reese had put me and some of my coworkers through that class, and it made a huge lasting impression on me. And I felt I really wanted to do something like that with for others in our industry, but obviously the lesser 12 weeks is a lot every Friday. And so we got together with the Future Leader Network Select Committee and built a proposal, and everyone really put a lot of effort in, really got behind this, and built a 2-day course where we bring in everyone from the people who were selected, and they do a 2-day training course, and there's a networking component after the fact. In the evenings they go to dinner, and it's just a really great way to bring people together and teach them some of the Dale Carnegie principles. Dale Carnegie, of course, well-known professional development leader there. And it's been hugely successful. It's been very well received.
So
and
who picks the kids that get to do this?
There's a selection committee for that. But it's based on the applications. So like, let's say we have 25 spots available. We might get 50 or 65 applicants, and right now we're only doing, I think, 1 session a year. And so you submit your answers on why you want to take the course and, what it would mean to you. And then if you get selected, SEMA basically subsidizes a portion of the course, and then you're basically responsible for the travel. And, that's it. And that's one of the programs that SEMA runs that is a huge value add for member businesses that participate. One of many things they do that people probably aren't aware of.
So is this high school kids? Is this like young 20s? Who's
this is
most...
in the industry, employed by an automotive aftermarket business?
Okay.
So if you're like, let's say you were the social media marketing manager for Moroso Performance,
Yeah.
Penelope Moroso, you would be eligible to take this course and get, if you get selected, of course, which she did, and she did great and loved it.
So when you said you was talking to the high school stuff, high school kids, about shop and everything, I know most schools and districts or whatever have done away with shop classes. Is that something that SEMA is trying to bring back in? Is have some shop classes? again?
They've done a lot of like high school builds with schools where they actually like assist in providing vehicles for high school shop builds, and then they help them sell them through Barrett Jackson to like raise money. I'm not super familiar with the status of it at the moment, but I know that they've done a lot of them. One of the big things, which people always joke about as the best kept secret, is they do have a SEMA loan forgiveness and like a scholarship program, and that is something that kids can apply to if you're going to school. The SEMA will refund you a portion of your loan. Like they'll send you.
Yeah.
I think it's up to 5,000 or 2,500. Don't quote me on that, but it's a another great program they do for kids.
So with the stuff you do with SEMA, is there something that people can do to get involved with this? Is it to help them in their career, I guess?
Yeah, so there's councils and networks on the SEMA website, SEMA.org, and there are various councils and networks depending on which segment of the market you're in, or in our case, if you're under 40, we're the only one that's age restrictive. By the way, I know it's kind of strange, but
I'm out on that.
yeah, and it's always awkward when you're like, hey, you've graduated, congratulations, you're too you've aged out, you've graduated, so it's. That's the only awkward pause there, but they're on the SEMA website. You can choose from a variety of options. Like they have the Professional Restyler Organization Pro, which is upfitters who do a lot of dealership work. You have the Wheel Tire. They just rebranded it. Wheel Tire
Brakes.
Suspension Brakes Council. They just rebranded it, so it's like WTCSB, something like that. Yeah, they just rebranded it, and so there are various ones, and then there's the SEMA Business Women's Network for women in the industry. So there's a lot of great programs out there, and a lot of it is volunteer run by the select committees. So to answer your question in the longest way possible, if you want to get involved, you can go to the website and you can reach out to one of the liaisons, and kind of join for general membership meetings and such. And if you participate, the opportunities will create themselves.
Now, is this something you have to be already in the industry? Like, what about if that's their goal is to do something like what you do with one of these companies and trying to get into a job like that? Is it restricted just to people already employed?
You do have to be employed with a SEMA member business. There is a SEMA jobs board, by the way, is still available. The SEMA industry jobs board for those looking to find positions. People post on there from time to time.
And that's
But
open on the website to anybody.
yeah, SEMA.org/jobs.
I had actually had
There's
a
really, you need a fact checker.
that people can Google it when they're done. I actually had a photographer friend of mine reach out earlier asking if anybody I knew was looking for, video, photo, like in-house type stuff. And I was like,
Mhm.
I know there's places out there, but I guess if the SEMA site's something, if someone's already in the automotive realm
Yeah.
wants to step up. Cause I guess like if you guys were looking for someone to step up and do more video or, whatever for you, then I guess you would post on the SEMA job board like that.
Would be an outlet, yes. It would certainly be a possibility there. I know that a lot of smart member businesses use it. It's a great tool, one of many that are available through SEMA.
So if someone was wanting to get into a job like you have, and you said you went to the job fair and just stumbled across that,
Yeah.
is there any other, I guess, insights you can give to those that are wanting to get into the industry?
Well, I mean, let's see. So we're enthusiasts. So there are the career fairs at the PRI show in Indianapolis, and there are the SEMA has career fairs as well. But the big thing really is, the advice I give is, if you're particularly passionate about a certain vehicle market or a particular product type, or if there's something that you're particularly passionate about and you are fond of certain brands, like check their website. Most of these websites have employment opportunities available. Another opportunity is there are a lot of really great recruiters in our industry that are pretty industry specific. I've helped connect quite a few people over the years, and there are a lot of really good people out there. Mark Osmondson with Jameson Search, Ron Spooler from Spooler and Associates. Like there are a lot of really good recruiters. Granted, not everyone does entry level, but it just depends on the segment. Some
Yeah.
people specialize in sales and marketing. Some specialize in placing engineers, stuff like that.
So with all the projects you've been able to have your hands in, whether it be with Dynamics or where you're at now with Morimoto, is there a certain vehicle or build that you like? I was involved with that. I had my hands in that. That's so far is my favorite that I've touched.
Oof, man, that's fun. There's a lot of pride. There's a lot of pride in all those builds. I didn't do a lot with the FRS. That was before my time. But the EcoBoost Mustang to me was at first. I'll be honest. I was very very upset. And Paul will laugh if he ever sees this. That I was very upset when he got an EcoBoost. I was like, dude, you couldn't have spent like a couple thousand more and got a GT with a V8. And he's like, it's cool, man. It's got a turbo. Like it'll be fine, and like it looks the same and it accomplishes the same purpose. Whatever. We had done a lot on that one, and I drove that one the most, and we had a lot of success with the Mustang product lines. I enjoyed that one because I had the most seat time in it. The F-150 I built, we had a Pro Charger and like long travel suspension from Baja Kits, which was awesome. But the last one that I did, we had I think it was a 2016 Camaro. It was a 2SS car, flew down Louisiana. I mean, we put a full Texas Speed Stage 3 package on it, cam, massive cam. I mean, it had a full wrap on it from Avery and HRE wheels. It was awesome. It was loud. It was fun. It was just such a cool car.
I think that's the one that we passed going to SEMA 17, I guess it was. I remember messaging you going, "Hey, is that you? We just passed." And you said, "No, someone else is in it." They wound up staying in the same hotel we at. I think in Albuquerque we'd stopped, and they were at the same hotel we were.
Yeah, I wised up after that first trip in the F-150. So it was like literally like I went to work early. We left on like a Friday, the week before SEMA. Coworker Cody and I, he's an awesome dude, pulling a trailer. We drove literally nonstop, and I mean nonstop, from St. Louis to Vegas, did the show and drove back. And I mean, I was like, yeah, you really don't want to be the guy that's driving the vehicle to and from. Like, as I've gotten older, I've realized like it's nice to be the guy that flies in and like, still does a lot of the same work, but doesn't have to do that drive.
That's my wife's job with what she does. I drove last year. She flew out. This year I'm building her Tahoe. I'm driving it out and she's flying back. So for me, it's a 2,200-mile trip each way or whatever. So the trip there.
Yeah, you're in North Carolina, right?
Yeah. The trip there's not so bad because you're excited. You're like, hey, let's go. But after you've been up all night, and you're in Vegas for a week and you get up Saturday morning and drive home, you're like, I don't want to do this 32-hour drive. Like this is
yeah, it's a lot, especially on the way. The way back is so bad. If you've torn down a booth, have you ever torn down a booth before at SEMA?
No, but I've
had after that, you're waiting for the crate to get picked up, and I mean, after that, you're just like, I'm done. That's it. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. Physically, I'm just, and then you're like, oh yeah, I got to drive, 30 hours, like you said. So those are the memories you look back on, though, and you're like, wow, that was a really good time.
Now, did y'all do a separate booth, or were you just part of the Hoonigan section this past year?
This past year, we were in the Hoonigan section outside. It was actually the first time I've ever exhibited outside, and it was an interesting experience. But we had all of our brands there. It was kind of cool to see everybody come together and be in one area. Being outside is challenging. I would be lying if I said I preferred it over outside. But or over inside, but it was a cool experience.
I'm sure you probably still have clothes that smell like tire smoke, though.
Yeah, especially with all the memorials for Ken and everything, and the burn yard was in very close proximity to us, and they did 2 shows a day. Those guys work so hard. That's a lot of emceeing, and I mean, it was fun. I definitely walked away with some tire smoke.
The one day that I was there, I got into the photo pit around the edge by the wall, made the mistake. That was the one day I had a white shirt on and I left. My shoulders were black. My collar was black. We walked in the hotel room that night. As soon as I opened the door, my buddies that were in the room was like, oh my gosh, you stink. I'm like, yep, it's the tires.
Yeah, we had assigned colors for shirts. So we had like white, black, and gray. And like the white shirt day I was like, oh boy.
Because it just floats in the air. There's nothing you can do. And
there's nothing you can do about it.
fills that
Yeah.
whole front parking lot. So,
Hmm.
but it was definitely,
It's
that
part of the fun.
aspect's a good time. I mean, to give the crowd something to do, but it's like part of that SEMA's not about the crowd, but it's become more about the crowd.
So that's a good segue. I have thoughts on that. Obviously you saw SEMA Fest, I'm sure. I assume. And
We
there's been
didn't
a lot
we
of
didn't make
criticism.
it to it, but we like where we were staying at the Sahara, like you could look off the parking deck and
Mhm.
see the whole thing.
I also stayed at the Sahara. Very nice. Those are cool, interesting rooms. But
Yep.
yeah, the
What
big thing with
did you have the one with the viewing showers, we call it?
yes, I did.
That's fun with a group
Yes.
of guys.
Thankfully, I had a room to myself. I greatly appreciate that from my Wheel Pros and Hoonigan colleagues. That was nice.
The
But
one
yeah,
year we went that we had that room, there was me, my wife, and two buddies. We would get ready and leave, and then she would get ready and meet us at the show. And she's like, "Yeah, there's no bathroom door. There's a window into the shower." She's like, "Yeah, I'm out."
it was a nice room though. I mean, aside from the quirks, it was nice. I liked it. To answer your question about what Diode was like when I started, we stayed at Circus Circus.
Wow.
And that's probably why I worked so hard because I was like, I can't stay here again. I got to work harder so we can afford to stay at a nicer hotel next year.
And those that don't know, if you've not been to Vegas, Circus Circus is the one you don't want to stay at.
It's the cheapest. It opened up in the early 70s, I think. Put it this way, my grandma went there the year it was open. She hasn't been with us for probably 20 years now, and I'm pretty sure they have the same carpets. And my Diode colleagues will hear that and laugh.
But I know a lot of people that'll stay there just because it is cheap. Because
It's like $50 a night. Yeah, it's
that
ridiculous. It's so
week
cheap.
everything in Vegas is overpriced. But if you stay the next week, it's like $39 a night. So yeah, they take
It
advantage.
comes with yeah, it's I wouldn't recommend it. Sorry to the folks there at Circus Circus, but it's if you I guess if you had a huge party of people and you were a startup business, sure it would make a lot of sense. But if you have alternatives, yeah, brutal. But SEMA Fest though, it's fun you bring that up. I think that SEMA Fest, though it wasn't as successful as everyone had hoped, I think is a big step for SEMA. And I think that a lot of people need to understand um, that our industry is definitely facing a lot of outside forces that are going to require
Sure.
a lot of funds to protect. And SEMA exists to create value for member businesses and to protect the automotive aftermarket, right? And so doing things like SEMA Fest, generating revenue. I saw a lot of people complaining about, oh, it's a cash grab. It's like, well, if that's true, it's being done to protect the industry. Like those funds are going towards, political affairs, the political action committee. There's a lot of reasons they do it. And also just consumer demand is very important. I think it's important that you have an opportunity to showcase like the SEMA type experience for consumers so that you get people excited. At the end of the day, like those are the people that buy our products. So it's probably a good idea to like show them some of the new stuff and like get them excited, you know. So it's a big change. The SEMA show is a B2B trade show. Friday is open to the public, and SEMA Fest was a first year event. A lot of people didn't really understand why it was being done, but I personally I'm for it. I'm glad it happened. It didn't work out as well as they had hoped, but I think that it's good we're trying something new, and I think people should, in the industry should see that and be supportive. So that's my only call to ask, or my call to action is
Well,
to
I
be
know
more
when
supportive of
they did
that.
the Ignited, one year I got into Ignited. The other ones,
Mhm.
by the time my section wherever I was at, I got out and got to Ignited. It was full. You
Mhm.
couldn't get in. They immediately turned you away. So it's
Yeah.
like, well, I was, looking forward to that. So maybe the SEMA Fest thing gives more opportunity for people to extend the event to a more public, or I should say, open to the public event.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a one size fits all approach, right? Like it's you're doing something like very new. Putting on new events is scary. It's extremely expensive. I don't even want to mention that, but it is extremely expensive. It's extremely risky. And you gotta start somewhere. And so they'll learn from 2023, and they'll make improvements, and they'll keep trying and keep perfecting until they get it right. And I think that's great. I think it's good for the industry. And again, like I hope people understand that that money is not just like being used to pay bonuses to see, like it's not
Yeah.
just frivolous, like frittered away. It's used to protect the industry. Like they're using that money or those funds to support the industry.
Because I think without SEMA backing the aftermarket side of our industry, we wouldn't have some of the stuff, because the government would try to shut the diesel stuff down. They would try to, all these headlights, they got to be stock. They can't be aftermarket.
Yeah.
The suspension's got to be stock. Like, I think SEMA actually has a big play in what we can and can't do.
Well, and the thing that a lot of people need to realize is that if something is illegal, like SEMA is not can't protect you from that. Like if you're willingly doing
Yeah.
something that's not going to comply, like you're not going to be protected. Like that, they can't. You have to. Where they come in is they help explain that. Okay, like for us, for example, like our products are compliant, right? And so if we were to face scrutiny, it would be, hey, here's the certification. And here's why here's the certification on these products to make them compliant. Some industries, like you have people that are they'll sell stuff that they know is not compliant, never will be compliant. There's not much that can be done there. But for businesses that want to, make sure their products are certified, SEMA runs those SEMA garages. There's one in California and there's one in Michigan. And they actually assist member businesses in CARB certifying their products, getting them EOs, so that their products can be sold in California without any, potential legal issues. And so that's a very expensive service that SEMA helps subsidize somewhat to make it more affordable for businesses so they can offer product that are, compliant for road use.
Is California the only state that gives pushback to the aftermarket like that?
I think you have California, and then I think you have wannabe California states. So I don't know which one specifically, but it varies. And I mean, there are some weird laws like all over the country that, like some states, they have ones that are like, suspension can only be such and such, or there's like weird, fender flare laws. And I mean, it ranges even to things like front license plates, right? Like, SEMA has actually helped get some front license plate legislation passed to like get rid of front plates in a lot of states. So
I know driving a big lifted truck across the country to SEMA, that was the one thing I was worried about. I was going to go through some state that didn't like where my headlight sat or my bumper sat, and the truck was going to get impounded. Like, that was one of my fears driving the big trucks across the country. So
yeah, rightfully so. I mean, there's some states are weird, but I mean, again, there's some things that are just with the aftermarket. There's a lot of common sense stuff, right? Like if you're going down the road, like I always think about lighting. Like if your lights are on and they're going red and blue, you're going to get in trouble. There's nothing that, anybody, I mean, just common sense. I always think that there's a common sense approach to that, and with every segment of the business.
Now, back on the SEMA Fest thing, as a vehicle builder that's at the show, I would love to see it almost be like the Ignited was. When you leave the show, they guide you to the event. That venue is pretty large. It's like we come out and it was like, all right, you're free to go wherever you want to go. I think it should have, the parade out of the show should have led to that venue. Even if you didn't stay, it should have gone there so that us builders could enjoy it as well.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's an awesome idea. It's been kind of some of those things have been like loosely passed around, and I think a big part of it is like people want the SEMA experience, right? But that also means that people would have to go to the SEMA show, which it is open on Friday. But then if you start doing that, then it kind of, some people are concerned it would water down the effect of the, it's a B2B trade show where you're there doing business reviews, talking new products, like actually doing real business planning for the next year and so forth. So I think it would make sense to have something on site. I don't know how space wise that works because you saw SEMA Fest, it was huge. It was almost too big. And I think that there'll be some tweaks to that, as things continue to develop. And I'm excited for it. I thought SEMA Ignited was really fun. I think that it had some good activations. I think the space was probably a little too small. So I think they're going to find the right balance of size and location and everything and activities, and it's going to continue to improve.
Yeah, I think once they get the bleachers set up and all that stuff, that it ate up into a lot of the space. But when I
Yeah.
build these vehicles, have the sponsors backing me and everything. If there's an event that they're at, I want to go because
Yeah.
I'm building the vehicles for me, but I'm also building it for the relationships where I have with these companies. I tell everybody if my wheel company goes, hey, I need you in Atlanta on Saturday. Well, I'm in Atlanta on Saturday. Like I'm not just getting these parts to get these parts. I'm here to represent these companies. So
Yep.
there's another event after SEMA, I'm down. So
Yeah, and that's a really one of the biggest things I always, the whole sponsorship conversation is like, I hate the word sponsorship. I've always thought the word partnership is better because you are partnering with brands to represent them so that you can assist them in either selling their product or getting visibility on their product or and so forth. And you have deliverables and such versus just like, hey, sponsor me a set of whatever for free. Like I enjoy that, and it just makes me laugh. And one of my favorite things about the SEMA show is that the more vehicles that you have your product on, the more they get seen in theory, and the more they're photographed and so forth. So it's a really good hotspot for cool builds, and that's why so many manufacturers like partnering with people that are confirmed as going to the SEMA show.
well, I know like this year, I even lined up this year's booth spot at last year's show, all the parts confirmed. But I get asked all the time, well, how did you get into that? How did you do it? And it's like it's taken years of building my brand to have that where people like you at companies like what you deal with are like, hey, we recognize that you do X, Y, and Z. We're willing
Mm-hmm.
to work with you. It's not just, hey, I stopped by the Sonic the other night. There was a few vehicles. Can you send me a set of bumpers or whatever? It's like it don't
Oh, we
work
get
like
that so often. Yeah, those are fun. We get that a lot. That's part of the fun, honestly.
now. Do you deal with a lot of the sponsorship stuff on your end, or
I I get asked a lot, and then I forward it to our marketing manager. Yeah, we have folks that run that for us. But I always like to ask a couple of questions first to vet it out. But obviously, I mean, I've been in the industry over a decade, so people come to me for things, and if it makes sense, then I'm always willing to assist. Sometimes I have to be the bad guy and say, like, to your point on the Sonic stuff, like, yeah, I understand that little Timmy has a forerunner that goes to Sonic on Thursdays once a month, but that's not exactly what we're looking for. We'll have a promotion at some point where you can save a little money or, something like that.
I'm sure it's hard on the company's end to try to figure out who's the right, if you've got X amount of dollars to do it, gives
Hmm.
you X amount of people you can be involved with. I guess making sure you pick the right person because I hear all these horror stories that companies get burned because they supply someone with parts or something and then the person disappears and you never see them
Yeah.
again. But I guess a lot of
Yeah.
the
I mean,
return customers help.
yeah, it helps that you have metrics, like, I mean, I post things occasionally on my various social media channels. And, if I say, hey, I post, I'll post X number of times and I'll share the metrics with you and you can see how many people were reached. And, like there's always got to be traceability, and you always have to be able to say like, hey, because of X, like we generated Y, or there's certain conversations that make those deals very valuable. And, the smart folks that do builds and stuff know that, and they have a good pitch put together and they deliver.
Well, I appreciate, like so when you worked with me with Diode, we like to become friends
Hmm.
then. So it's cool to see you progress and like I said, move across the country like that, even during a
Yeah,
time when no one should have been moving. So
yeah. I put my 2 weeks in the day the world shut down, literally.
yeah, hopefully we don't go through that again because that was I mean, it made for some good
Yeah,
pictures when you could take your vehicles out and go to some cool road
yeah.
downtown and park sideways across the road because there was no one out. That was fun, but other than that, it wasn't so fun. So
It was nice getting into some of the restaurants that are a little harder to get into now, but it had its moment, and I came and went. It's I'm glad that we can put that behind us now.
So, do you guys have anything big planned for SEMA this year, or is that something y'all work with later in the year?
I am honestly not as in tune with those conversations. I'm not sure what their plans are. I certainly hope that they plan to exhibit. I think it's a value add, and I personally enjoy attending the event and catching up with friends and showing off some of our new stuff. But I guess we'll see.
For sure. Well, if people want to find you, where's the easiest way to track you down?
I have a channel on Facebook. It's just Nick Caloroso. I also have a YouTube, it's Caloroso, and I do all the various channels. TikTok is Caloroso, and Instagram and everything. And I also post quite a bit on Carmunity. So it's a new upcoming app that was developed by my good friend Dan. It's literally like Facebook for cars.
Not
You
heard of that
can
one.
put your builds on there. Yeah, it's a really cool program. Dan is also doing a couple events this year, so that's one that I'd give him a shout out to and wish him the best because I'm a forum guy. I like that old school forum thing, and if you like car content, I try to post car stuff at least once a day.
So it's like community, but car community.
Exactly. He's a smart guy. It's brilliant.
I'll have to check that out because I'm always looking for something,
Yeah, you should join. You should join. It's fun, and you never know. You see some builds on there, and it's a good time.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on and chatting
Yeah,
with me. So,
I
well,
appreciate you having me. I'm gonna cook my wife is 31 weeks pregnant, so I'm gonna make her some dinner, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and catch up.
no problem. I appreciate it, Nick.